Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Mr. QUE from Music Notes, and you're listening to the Musicality podcast.
Hi, this is Christopher, founder of Musicality, and welcome to the Musicality podcast. Today on the show, I'm talking with LaMar Queen, also known as Mr. QUE, the rapper behind Music Notes, a company that's been having great success providing educational rap songs to schools across the USA. Educational songs aren't a new idea, but Music Notes brings a really fresh take to it, and their songs have been shown to improve test scores in non-music subjects, as well as encouraging more responsible attitudes towards schoolwork and peer support for healthier living initiatives. I must confess that when I first came across Music Notes, I thought it was really cool, but I wasn't sure it was a good fit for this podcast, because it is a fascinating musical project. But is it really about musicality? Well, as I dug in, I realized that yes, there are some really interesting questions about musicality here that I was excited to pick Lamar's brains on. You'll find that there are big learning points in this interview for any musician wanting to connect more deeply with music. We talk about why music is so powerful as a channel for learning, the challenges of writing a song that has an impact beyond just entertainment, and how Lamar got started freestyle rapping, and a simple way you can try it yourself. I am really impressed with the work Lamar is doing with his team at Music Notes, and it was cool to hear his thoughts on how their projects are influencing young minds, both for their musical development and their education and upbringing outside of music. We all have a tendency to get stuck in the weeds and the nitty-gritty of learning music, so I hope this episode will do for you what it did for me, which was to serve as a great reminder of the magic of music and how impactful it can be. My name's Christopher Sutton, and this is the Musicality podcast from Musical U. Welcome to the show, Lamar, also known as Mr. QUE. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Christopher. It's a pleasure to be here this morning.
I've had such a good time studying up on you guys and watching your videos online, and I can only imagine what it's like live because the kind of math concerts you put on are like nothing I've seen before. You're such a compelling performer, and I'm really keen to talk about all of it. But before we dive into Music Notes, I'd love to learn more about you as a musician because you are the musician co-founder of this project. You wrote a lot of all the early material, and now you, I believe, have a collaborator. But where did you come from as a musician? How did you get started in music?
Whoa, my background in music is an interesting one. So as a young child, at the tender age of 5, I'm proud of this story, but I'm also a little bit ashamed of it because I became a bit of a thief in the process. But my sister, she got a keyboard for Christmas that she never played. And it just sat in her room. And one day I just went and I took it and brought it into my room and just started playing. And I had a relative, my older cousin, he came by and he taught me a few songs. He taught me chopsticks and a Stevie Wonder song. I wish I could remember, maybe Overjoyed or something like that. And I would just practice those songs until I got them. And so that's pretty much how I got started as a youngster. And then as I got older, there were songs I would hear on the radio that I would just enjoy, and I try to play them. Played a little bit of trumpet and clarinet as a kid, but let that go pretty quickly and stuck to the piano. And so that's how my actual playing began, and then my songwriting and rapping is like a whole another story.
Cool. Well, let's stay in those early years for a moment. And was your household musical? You mentioned your sister had the keyboard to begin with. Were your
hmm
parents musicians? Did they encourage you in music?
My dad, so my family comes from the church background. So a lot of my family either sung in the choir or played an instrument at the choir because my grandfather had a church.
Hmm.
And so my dad was the drummer at the church. Aunts and uncles played all the instruments. And so I saw them playing. I guess, I don't know if it was more nature or if it was my environment that led me to, stealing that keyboard. But something happened where I was just drawn towards music. And so my parents, they never put me in lessons or anything. I mean, I give them a hard time even to this day and say, like, how could you see your 5-year-old child playing an instrument and not put them in a class? And I noticed I make them feel a little too bad about it, so I stopped giving them a hard time. But um, yeah, I didn't really have a push externally. It all pretty much came from within.
Gotcha. And you mentioned Stevie Wonder, and you also mentioned you went into rap and songwriting. What
Hmm.
kind of music were you surrounded by growing up?
Growing up, a lot of hip hop and gospel, and like 80s and 90s R&B.
Gotcha. And when did you first start to think you could write your own stuff rather than just learning chopsticks or Stevie Wonder?
That started in middle school. I would be a very irresponsible, preteen, and I got a I got like a daily allowance for school, $4 to catch the bus to school and home and buy lunch. And on some days, I would spend all my money at school, and I would have to walk home. And I'm gonna sound like one of those old guys. I walked 5 miles uphill to school and 5 miles uphill back home. But I wouldn't have bus money, so I would walk a few miles back home, and I had my best friend that would walk with me. And to pass time, because this was pre-internet and cell phones, I would rap whatever was happening at school that day. I pretty much would summarize the day as a freestyle walking home with my best friend Jason, and so that's when I realized that I could rap. And then I decided to write my first song maybe a few months later, and oh my God, my friends gave me the hardest time for that. They told me it was so bad and laughed at me. I pretty much quit writing. And until another friend of mine got me back into it. But middle school is when I really got into the actual like songwriting and becoming an instrument myself opposed to like playing it.
So we haven't really. I don't think we've ever talked about freestyle rap on the show before. We've talked a lot about improvisation and a little bit about
Mm-hmm.
scat, but not otherwise vocal rap.
Mm-hmm.
Like freestyling is such an unusual skill in the world of music. I think just because you're not just coming up with the rhythms and in some cases the pitches, but you are coming up with lyrics on the
Yeah.
spot. I know we're going back a little bit, but can you think back to when you started doing that? You said you just you realized you could rap, but on day one when you were walking home with your friend when for the first time you tried it, did it just kind of come out of you? Did you have any kind of sense of how does someone freestyle? Did you have any kind of rhymes you knew would work, or how did you get going?
That is a great question. I think for whatever reason, I'm more expressive through my music and through art. I will share a thought musically before I'll just sit down and have a conversation with somebody. So I can't pinpoint exactly how it felt or what I drew from for the lyric, but I do remember it just being just so free flowing and just natural, and it was just easy for me to say, I know these are all the things that happened today, and as I'm rapping, I'm just kind of like, I don't know, one step ahead of myself, thinking of what that rhyming word is going to be to connect like the previous thought. Um, it's something that I've never really been able to explain like the way I want to, but yeah, it's just something that kind of came to me. And then the more I did it, the easier it became. I've noticed there's times where I fall back from it, and then it gets a little harder for me. So it's definitely a skill that, seeing how I've digressed and have also gotten better at it through my work, is something that I think can be learned from anybody through like the right of practice or teaching, training. Um, if freestyling is something people want to do.
Yeah, so if someone came to you and as a teacher and a performing musician yourself, you've probably had teenage kids come up to you and
Hmm.
ask, how would you get started with freestyling, or how could you improve your odds of getting going with it if it's a bit intimidating to you?
Yeah, my step one is a word challenge. Like it's a challenge that you do where you just give somebody a word and just tell them to rap to it. And so when I'm doing it with, amateur freestylers, I'll always give them rhyming words. So the first word I'll throw out is cat, and then I'll throw out bat, and throw out hat, so that they'll hear the word and then they can just rap to it. And then as they, grow in their skill set, I'll start throwing out, 3-syllable words that aren't rhyming. And then it's up to them to kind of come up with their own system of how to put everything together.
I see, that's really interesting. Well, I'm definitely going to go away and try my hand at cat, bat, and rat. I'm not going to do it here on the spot. But You mentioned that did lead on to songwriting for you, and the first song was a bit of a bomb.
Oh, it was terrible. It was awesome to
What?
me, but to the
Can you
rest of
remember
the
what it was
world,
about?
I really wish I could. The only thing I remember, and I probably blocked it from my memory because my friends made it so traumatic for me. But um, Easy E from NWA had a famous line, "Rolling down the street in my 6'4", and for some reason that is how I decided to start my rap, and that's the only line I remember from the song. Is I started off with that, and then I started doing my own thing, and they laughed at me, told me never do it again, and I almost listened. Luckily, I had a friend in high school that kind of got me back into like writing and recording, but I tell even my students and people I work with till this day, like, please don't let friends and people that don't see your vision distract you because I love music, but just being a young impressionable kid, that negative energy from my friends really kind of like threw me off for a second.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to come back to that because of the role you play now in other kids' musical
Hmm.
journeys. How did you go forwards from there? You'd had that kind of discouraging
Yeah,
experience with your friends, but you said it didn't completely stop
it
you.
didn't completely stall me because my family
Mm.
was is and I was still going to church. We're still singing in the choir. We're still doing our music thing on the side. So that's where I was able to continue to like just hone in on my skill set and build up um, in that regard. Because if it weren't for my family doing a lot of the music we did on weekends and stuff like that, I probably would have completely stopped. So it really was church and family that kept me grounded and helped me remember like, oh yeah, I am good at this. And this is fun. So it's not all about impressing your friends all the time.
And in that period from, writing your first song and getting that bad feedback to the point where you started music notes, did you have in your head you wanted to do something in music? Were you still kind of thinking about a musical trajectory, or was that out of
Not
the
at
picture?
all. I
No?
never imagined myself being a musician, as far as professionally playing or performing. I thought that I would be playing sports. I was really into sports, and at one point I thought I would be a lawyer. I honestly, that everything I'm doing now, I never imagined as a child that I would be doing. Never thought I would teach. Never thought I'd be a musician. It all was a part of a plan that was set, I guess, out for me that I didn't know I would have to fulfill. But um, yeah, growing up, it was just I think typical kid stuff, just sports and video games, and I just want to make money doing what I love.
And you went into teaching, not the obvious choice for someone wanting to make money doing what they love.
Exactly.
So, how did that come to be?
Oh man, my wife is gonna get me for telling this story. Yeah, but it's the truth. So my ex girlfriend in college, she was the one that convinced me to teach. Like I would. So early on, I started out in early elementary school tutoring, and I had a teacher very early on say, Lamar, you're going to be a mathematician. I didn't even know what that meant, but I was in fourth, fifth grade, tutoring and helping out, second, third grade classes, and so I guess that was like my first understanding that I liked working with kids and teaching. But in college, I would go home and tutor like little cousins who were struggling in school. And so when I came back from one of the vacations, my ex told me that I should become a teacher. She had a background of teachers in her family, and she's like, Lamar, you would be a great teacher. I see you working with your little cousins during the vacations. I think you should change your major. I was a business major. And so the start of my junior year, I totally just dropped business and went into education, based off of her suggestion.
And it wasn't music education, right? You went into
No,
maths.
elementary education. It wasn't even math.
Okay, yeah.
Elementary. My dream grade was like fourth, fifth grade. And I've never taught that. I've always done secondary, middle, and high school. But I went into elementary education because I wanted to make my impact early and set a solid foundation for students. So as they progress up into middle, high school, and college, they would have like something solid to lean on in case they, have any doubts or fall off.
Gotcha. And so you graduated, you went into teaching. At what
Hmm.
point did you meet your co-founder, Jimmy Pascasio, and dream up music notes?
Now this is where the music no story begins. So I graduated, went into teaching. I was overly confident. I think I had some level of false confidence where I thought I would go in and the kids are just gonna like me just because I'm me and I'm young and I like me, so they're gonna like me. And like that totally wasn't the case. So the first few weeks of school, I'm teaching the eighth grade class, and they're like, Mr. Queen, your class is boring. I said, what? Like, no, my class is turned up. We having fun. We doing these notes. Like, y'all just need to get with my program. And I had a student, Elijah Nay. She recently graduated from college. Still keep in touch with her on Facebook. I love her. She started a revolt in the class, and she said, Mr. Queen, like your class is boring. And if you don't rap, we not listening. And I said, nah, I'm not gonna rap for you. This is school. Like you don't do stuff like this in school. And they're like,
Did they
well,
have an inkling that you had a musical background, that you had
and
done
and
rap
that's
in the
the
past?
crazy part. I never told them I did music. You know, we
No.
we just met. We'd only been in class together for a few weeks, maybe a month. And so this part of the story is harder for me to tell now, because of this artist's new reputation. But they were like, Mr. Quinn, you look like Kanye West. And your class is boring, so you need to rap. And this was in 2008, so Kanye was ultra
Top of the
popular.
world.
Uh-huh. And so after they begged and begged for like 2 weeks nonstop, they asked every single day. I said, you know what, let me just try it, because they were failing. I was stressed out over being called boring. Like my ego took a huge hit. And I said, you know what, let me just try this out. So I had a beat. So me and my cousins were working on a track, and I hijacked the beat. I stole that beat and I started working on the slope intercept song because that was my current lesson plan. Wrote slope intercept, went back and performed it for them, and it was a huge hit. And after I performed it, teachers started hearing about it, and a teacher asked me to perform it at the holiday party. So at this point, a few months had gone by. I had a couple songs, but the teacher asked me to perform the first song, slope intercept, at the holiday party. So I did it. And when I finished the song, I sat down next to my boy Jimmy, my business partner, and he just kind of leans over and is like, hey, you want to make a video for the song? Get the students in there? I was like, yeah, let's do it. And that's how it all began. Like that one video just changed everything.
Yeah. So I'm sure after hearing this interview or watching it, our audience are going to run off and watch all of your videos and check out musicnotesonline.com. But most of them probably haven't yet heard or seen your rap
Yeah.
videos. Can you give them a taste of what Slope Intercept was all about? And I should ask first, I don't want to take a massive detour into maths, but for someone who grew up in the UK, that phrase actually, slope intercept, is not super familiar to me. So can you just explain, like, what were you teaching in class that the
Hmm.
kids wanted you to rap about, and what was that track like?
So slope intercept is just graphing a linear equation in the form y equals mx plus b. Because there's a bunch of different formats you can graph an equation. You can use point slope form, slope intercept form. You can just use points. And so we were working on slope intercept at that particular time, and that's just using the y intercept and the slope to graph a line. It's the standard format, it's the most popular. And so that's what we were doing. And the rap, it was very straightforward. Like let's talk about slope intercept. I don't mind if you interject, just don't disrespect. You say you got a question for me? Yes. What's y equals mx plus b? This is a line and function form. It's also slope intercept for it. Half y'all like this is boring. The other half is like this sounds foreign. M represents the slope of a line. If it's negative, then you know it declines. B is where it crosses the y axis. If you don't pay attention, then y ask us to repeat. Sit down in your seat. Listen to the words that I say to this beat. Parallel lines have the same rise over run, even if the y-intercepts are a 9. And the one question, can you plot two ordered pairs? Put the x values and the y is there? Oh my, I swear, this math stuff is easy, and I'll take you there. Like, let's talk about slope intercept. Yeah.
Nice, very good.
Oh,
That
man.
was just off the top of your head all these years later. Is this
Man,
still
that
like top of your lineup when you perform?
pretty much, that's my baby. That's like your firstborn. It just has a special place in my heart. And so it actually still is, I think, my favorite song, but I don't perform it as much lately because students and teachers are like more familiar with our most recent stuff. So as often as I get a
Awesome.
chance to perform that, I do it. So thank you.
Tremendous. Well, I'm a massive fan of like nerdcore hip hop music, which is all
Hmm.
about like science and like geek culture. And so to me, the idea of a crowd screaming out for slope intercept isn't
Oh
all
my
that
God.
wacky, but I think probably for our listeners, they're going, "What did I just hear?"
Exactly.
But you
And it's
can't,
so
you can't
crazy.
you can't stop listening. Like that was really
Uh,
compelling, and I was feeling that physical desire to know what was going to happen
what's
next,
next?
in a way that like even I, as a nerdy mathematician growing up, never experienced in maths class.
Hmm.
Like I was never quite as engaged as I was just then listening to you rap. Very cool.
Oh, nice.
So it went down well with your students by the sound of it, and you performed it for the
Hmm.
teaching community at your school.
Yep.
And Jimmy leaned over to you and said, "Let's do a video."
Hmm. Did the video.
And what was
It
that video
got
like?
that video was very amateur. What's below amateur? Is there anything below amateur? Because that's what it was. And we used science heat lamps as our lighting for the video. So I'm in class sweating like a baked ham. And we shot the video. It was Jimmy's first video, but the great thing about it is his background as a middle schooler was in video. So we kind of came together with this synergy, like, oh, I started rapping in middle school, you started doing video in middle school. Let's do this. He was doing a video production class at school with students. I'm rapping with my students. So it was definitely something that we were meant to do together. And we shot the video. We got a bunch of our students to come play different parts. We got some teachers to get in the video. We made it a community event. And so we did it. We didn't even post it online. Someone else posted the video online, and it ended up like going viral at the time. Like for what, not compared to today's virality, but in 2008, a video getting like 250,000 views in a week was like big.
Yeah, I think that's still
So,
pretty big.
oh yeah, I guess it is. I just saw the Avengers get like 20 million in one day, so I think that's like skewing my
Well, if that's where
my
you're setting your
outlook.
standards, but
um so yeah, we got those
amazing.
views, and then
Yeah.
teachers just started reaching out, and that's really when it began. When we got the outreach from other teachers asking for more.
And so thinking back to that phase of things when you were first, standing up in front of the class, first doing it in the teachers' lounge or the get together, and collaborating with Jimmy to put together the video, were you at all nervous? Like, were you feeling like this might go wrong, or I don't know what this is going to be, or I want this to be amazing, but it might not be? How were you feeling at that stage?
um I think I'm something in me was just like too dumb to be nervous. I I just did it. Maybe it's because it was music, and I was always comfortable just doing music. Like I don't know too many middle schoolers that would have just went to their song friends and said, "Hey, I have a song. Want to hear it?" For whatever reason, I didn't. That fear didn't exist in terms of me getting up and performing, and I think that
Mm,
might come from just my background presenting like at my grandfather's church, getting up as a kid and performing. So when they made the request at the holiday party, I was a little nervous just because um, I had never, performed in front of like professionals before. And, we're doing rap songs in front of a group of professionals, but the actual rapping part didn't bother me.
I see. And was it immediately clear to you what music notes would become? Like once you saw that initial reaction and people seemed to be responding to it, could you just kind of envisage the next however many years, or what were you
I,
thinking?
I wasn't thinking that's where Jimmy comes in. He's the more visionary. I'm the instinctual, emotional type of person, and I just go off of like feel and passion. And then so he was the one that saw the vision for the video. I'd never thought of a video. And so even to this day, like I still don't fully know or see where it's going. I know we have, a purpose in terms of reaching children and, playing sort of a schoolhouse rock, like filling that lane, so to speak. But I kind of stick to what I'm good at, which is just doing music and making school fun for kids, and then the other things I kind of leave to other people to work out.
I think that's a smart move. So I think for people listening, maybe the obvious next step is people like these songs, they like the videos. Let's do
Hmm.
more songs, more videos about math.
Yeah. Hmm.
And Music Notes has become much more than that in a few different ways. So,
Definitely.
for example, you've done a lot of live performances. Could you talk a bit about
Hmm.
that?
Yes, the first time I heard a whole audience singing Slope Intercept, it was crazy. The first time I did a classroom visit and students started crying when I walked in, crazy. Um, the first time I got stopped in public behind like educational music, it was just crazy. I never thought, like, I still tell people to this day, like, you realize I'm a teacher, right? But in their eyes, when you're on a stage or on a screen, you become, I guess, a celebrity, so to speak. Um, and so that progression has been crazy. Going to schools and just motivating children to learn through music, getting them to believe in themselves. Even in my own classroom, giving students the opportunity to showcase they understand content through a song is amazing. So yeah, the growth from like that one song to where we are now is something that I couldn't see, but it's a lot of fun getting up on stage and performing. We've been blessed to perform, at Petco Park where the Padres play. We've been blessed to collaborate with Illumina and write songs about genomics and songs about DNA. We've been blessed to help students with the health and wellness aspect of things and teaching about, anti-smoking and tobacco usage. So that one song has led to so much.
Yeah, and that touches on a couple of things I was really keen to ask you about. And one is, how do you come to write a new song? You clearly feel like someone who's creative and for whom
Hmm.
music is a fairly natural thing.
Hmm.
But I think there's such skill in taking a boring topic, for lack of a
Yeah.
better word, something that
Yeah.
people assume is boring, and
Uh-huh.
turning it into good music that's actually
Yeah.
compelling for the listener and has the educational impact your music has.
Hmm.
Could you give us an insight into, if we take that genomic song or one of the health songs you've been working on recently,
Hmm.
what does that process look like for you in terms of going from nothing to the finished song?
So now we definitely have a system where we have to do our homework, especially if it's a new topic. We get if there are experts in the field that we're working with, we'll have them send us relevant content, vocab, key points that the listener needs to understand it. And then us as teachers, we say, how is a novice going to be able to digest, excuse me, how will they be able to digest the content? And then the musician comes in and says, all right, how do we make this sound good? So that's kind of how the system works. If it's a song that we're working on exclusively on our own and it's a new subject, we'll hop on YouTube University or we'll go on Google and just start doing our homework, find some reliable sources that we can cite if needed, gather all of our information, and then we follow that same process. Go back to put the teacher hat on and say, what does a new learner need as a scaffold or as like a building block to understand and digest this information? Then put the musician hat on and say, all right, how do we make this hot so that our listeners will listen and enjoy it?
And is there a struggle? Like, is there a tug of war between I've got to educate them with these things and I just want to make a
Oh,
track that's good to listen to?
God, yes, it is.
Okay.
That is a struggle that I had to like really overcome. And my business partner and I are polar opposites. So he's like structure, and I'm like free flowing. And so we're just butting heads. But I learned like we have to have a certain structure in place for the songs to meet the need of a learner. Also gain the respect of the experts in the field and be good enough for students to listen to. I was solely, stuck on the sound. It just needs to sound good. It just needs to sound good. The music will do all the talking. And so it took me a little while to just say, you know what? I do have to do this homework. I do have to respect the experts that are going to hear the song. I don't want them to just say like, oh, they're just throwing a bunch of words together that sound good and they're not actually teaching anything. And so, that was a little bit of a struggle. But one thing about me is I'll get in my feelings for a second, and then, by the next day I'm over it and I'm back to work. So, um, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And it, I love the way you put it there that, you can't just throw a bunch of vocab in there, call it a math song, and be done with it. You
Mm-hmm.
guys really are educating through music, not just coming up
Mm-hmm.
with music that, you can get away with playing in a school because it has the right words in it.
Exactly.
So, have there been any kind of big learning points for you? And I'm asking not because I don't think, apart from just being interesting, I think our listeners, there's a lot to learn from how you communicate through your music. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think our listeners are going to go away and write songs for their elementary maths class,
Yeah.
but I think they probably can learn a lot from you about how to approach a song with a purpose, like a sense of
Mm-hmm.
purpose beyond
Definitely.
entertainment. So,
Mm-hmm.
have there been any kind of big learning points or any kind of processes you go through to help you write those tracks and kind of make it coherent and effective?
Yeah, I think I have different processes for different songs and like different stages that wherever I am at the time. But I think one thing that probably is consistent throughout um, is this idea of just knowing exactly what I want the listener to know and feel once I'm done. Um, that happens regardless of how I approach a song. Once it's done, it's kind of like a lesson plan, and I think that's why this ends up working out for us because as teachers, we have to create a plan that has an objective and standards that have to be met from the student. And the same thing happens with my songs. What do I want the listener to feel after we're done, and what do I want them to know? And then I'll make sure my hook or my chorus like is just the epitome of those ideas, and then my verses break it down and explain everything.
I I love that you use the word feel there. Like I think that maybe is the critical thing here because it would be easy to do a math song and just shove a bunch of vocab in it and have no educational impact. And it would
Mm-hmm.
be only a bit more difficult to write a math song that has all of the educational content and delivers the lesson, but no one wants to listen to it. It's a
Exactly.
bit harder still to have a math song that educates and is good music to listen to. But you actually do have this real spirit to all of your music that I'm sure is critical for it to be used by teachers and so popular
Mm-hmm.
with students. And I guess that comes down to the feeling, the fact that you aren't just
Yes.
thinking about what are the facts they need to know. You're thinking
Mm-hmm.
about how do we motivate them, how do we inspire them, how do we get them feeling the right way about this subject matter.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. A lot of what I do comes down to feel when it's all said and done. I've scrapped so many songs. I've written so many songs 3 or 4 times because it just didn't feel right. Or if I step away from it for a week or two and I come back to it, I'm like, yeah, this just isn't it. Um, so sometimes more than anything, that feel and that energy works out. Is as important as I know the content is. When it comes to music, if it doesn't feel good, I mean, why are we doing it? That's our whole purpose of having music is to shift emotions, from sad to happy when needed. So,
So that's the other thing I was so keen to talk to you about, which is you're using music as a really effective tool and channel to reach these young kids.
hmm
And, we've mentioned your math stuff, and you alluded to the fact that you're starting to do some healthy living material
hmm
too.
hmm
And you have videos about like going back to school and being
yes,
organized and prepared and,
hmm
showing up in the right way. You're shaping these kids' mindsets in such a positive way through music. And I just want to understand why through music. It's clearly not just pure entertainment, and
hmm
it's easy to watch your videos and imagine how much more effective it is than just telling the kids that same
yeah,
material.
yeah.
So, why do you think music has that power? Why is it for you the medium through which you've chosen to do this work?
Great question. So there's a few different reasons why. The first reason is La Jeunet, that first group of students, that class, they asked for music. And our responsibilities as adults and educators is, we have to listen to our kids. And a lot of times we'll feel like through our life experience, we have all the answers for them. But our babies know what they want and what they need if we sometimes just take the time to listen. So that was the first thing, just listening to them. And then two, just understanding the power of music. And there's been extensive research done on how music shifts emotions, how music is curing people in particular ways. I think the first thing I'm thinking about is, our elderly community that suffers from like Alzheimer's or dementia, and how music is able to bring life back to that group. Um, we have seen music totally been like weaponized against our kids. And so it's appropriate that, responsible adults create a balance for our kids to listen to, in terms of hip hop, popular, like, I don't even want to say hip hop, just music in every genre has a level of um content that we don't want our students to listen to. And so I feel like, we got to have that same balance. And that's, those are like all of my reasons for doing what we do.
Terrific. And give give us a sense of what Music Notes looks like today. We've talked about making videos, we've talked about live performances, but
Hmm.
what does the whole portfolio or the whole project look like?
Oh, it's pretty extensive. So we do our concerts, live educational concerts. We do positive behavior intervention concerts where students that are having issues at school behaviorally can come and listen to our character development concert. We have testing pep rally concerts where we get students excited and prepared to come and take, the standardized testing we have here in the States. We do professional development. We train teachers on how to use music in the classroom. We train teachers on how to get their students to write their own educational songs. We do keynotes. We do talks at conferences where we just give teachers and adults a framework for how important it is to introduce these concepts in the school setting. And a lot of times I like to let the teachers know, like, we aren't reinventing the wheel. Schoolhouse Rock did it at a very high level. We have people like Bill Nye that had music in his TV shows at a very high level. I just like to say we're just the chrome wheel on the chrome rim on the wheel. We just kind of made it shiny, uh, made it appealing to the kids today, and that's what we do. So we pretty much are like a supplement for teachers to use in the classroom. We're not a replacement for good teaching or anything like that. We're like a tool that you can pull out of the toolbox and use as needed.
And one thing I was curious about, and you and I touched on before we hit record, which was that teaching kids songwriting and actually having the kids create music is becoming part of what you do as well. I think that was in
Hmm.
the context of your healthy living work. Could you talk about that a
Definitely.
bit?
Yeah, definitely. The songwriting component is important, especially when it comes to this new program that we're doing, just getting students to understand the hazards of tobacco usage. Just smoking, vaping is very popular now, and it's marketed as a healthy alternative to smoking. And so, what we're doing is we're taking our skill set as teachers and songwriters, and we're going to go into schools and take those student leaders, show them how to write songs, and perform them for their peers, or get their peers to write songs, because sometimes the peer-to-peer interactions is stronger than the adult to student interaction. So we're just trying to take everything that we do, teach it to the kids, and let them lead each other, because peer pressure is way stronger than adult advice sometimes. So, we just want to give our student leaders the tools they need to be able to pull their peers in the right direction. So that's kind of like what we're doing with the 2P stuff, tobacco use and prevention. And then our songwriting in general um, covers like that same dichotomy, where we just want the students to become the leaders and do what we're doing. So it's not always like an adult telling you what to do. It's your friends kind of trying to pull you in the right direction.
That's fascinating, and I think it comes back a little bit to what you were saying in the context of your own story, which is, the impact your friends' words, whether positive or negative, can have on you, right? To be
Definitely,
able to
definitely.
empower those students to create their own music, share it with their friends, and have a positive impact with it is a
Yep.
huge thing.
Yes, sir. I like I like the fact that that we're able to go and get students to be confident enough to go from like I've never written a song to okay, I will go perform this song in front of my peers and to see, the peers respond to it so positively. I feel like our songwriting and our training component of music notes is going to be really big for us moving forward, especially like once I'm just too old and wrinkly to be on stage for the kids. It's good to know we have something in place where like this can keep moving forward.
And do you ever find kids struggle with the music side of it? I ask
Mm-hmm.
because, a lot of the work we do at Musical U is about helping people see that they can be musical after all. And,
Mm-hmm.
with us, that mostly is with adults, but
Mm-hmm.
there's such a phenomenon of kids being discouraged early in music, feeling like they're not
Yeah.
musical. And I was just really interested to know how you guys have experienced that in terms of trying to reach the kids through music and going even further, as you just talked about, and trying to get the kids making music. What's your experience of that been?
It's been very interesting. Getting students to make music, it's harder than I thought it would be initially. I thought it would be way easier, but once we got started, I realized like everyone isn't a songwriter. And so we really had to dig into our teaching bag to put scaffolds in place for students to actually be songwriters, whether it's like sentence frames where we're starting off rhymes for them, whether it's a list of rhyming words that relate to the specific content that we're focused on. If it's sitting with them for hours at a time and helping them streamline their thoughts. Maybe graphic organizers that we've created that helps them organize their thoughts so they can put it into a song. Initially, I thought it would just be come sit with them and they're going to start rapping, and I realized that is really is just another level of teaching where we have to meet every student at their in their learning space, visual learners, physical learners, and everything in between. So it's um it's definitely a process, but we're getting better at it. Year after year, we're finding new things that are working with different types of students.
I love that. And for a moment, I thought you were going to say, I realized not everyone is a songwriter. So now with some kids, we just give them the maracas and we put them at the back and they shake and they're fine. But no, as a teacher, of course, you saw that as an opportunity to get everyone writing songs. You just
hmm
needed to find the way to do it, the tools to give them,
hmm
the stepping stones they needed.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
That's awesome. And you mentioned something in passing there that reminds me. I was reading on your website about the power of movement, and I want to be respectful of your time, so I'll make this my last question.
Okay, we're
But
good.
given that we've talked about the power of music and what makes it effective for teaching, could you just talk a
hmm
little bit about that, the movement aspect of it, and how you make use of that, or how you see it being effective in your work?
Yeah, movement allows for you to teach to the whole student. Uh, we have this epidemic right now in schools of like ADHD. And so we have to just get our students up and moving just as a management tool, classroom management. If students are sitting the whole time, your class is going to flop. So that's on the management side. Now, from the actual teaching side, I forget the actual like the language and the context that I was taught this framework, but it's called total physical response, which is getting students up out of their seats, get them moving, and get them to respond to content through movement. So, for example, if I'm teaching like multiplication, every time I say multiplication, I'll do this. And then the kids do this too. And now they're associating this X with the multiplication symbol. If that's like for third graders that are seeing this symbol for the first time. So multiply, everybody says multiply. They do it, they remember it. Divide. This is the division symbol, so they'll know divide. So that movement just gives some students something to hold on to. The ones, especially the ones that need like movement in their classroom, it gives them their brain extra stimulus to latch on to the content.
I see, that's fascinating. And we've been seeing this a little bit recently at Musical U. We're doing a new course that uses the Kodai approach, and there's a lot of kind of hand signs for different pitches.
Uh-huh.
And
And
we
that's,
really see like some students are super into it, and they're like,
yep.
finally, I get this, it makes sense.
Yep.
And others are like, I cannot coordinate my body, I don't
Yeah.
enjoy this is not helping me. But I definitely hear what you're saying, that, involving the body, not just the mind, does make
Yes.
for much more engaged learning, right? Whatever
Yep.
age you are, I think.
So you guys need a teacher credential because that's like a big part of a teaching is just understanding like those different tools are gonna work with different types of learners. So kudos to y'all.
Tremendous. Well, I've so enjoyed having the chance to talk with you, Lamar, and like I said at the beginning, it's just been a blast watching your videos online and getting a sense of what you're up to
Thank
at
you.
Music Notes. What's coming next for you guys? What are the big projects for 2019?
So 2019, the biggest thing is our work with the LA County Office of Ed. That's number one.
And that's
Really
the
figure
tobacco usage
Yeah, that's the
project, is that right?
tobacco use and prevention education, 2P for short. So that's the big thing. And then we also have a big tour we're going to be doing. Every year we've been doing a Texas and Louisiana tour. So it's 2 week long tour where we hit a school every day, sometimes two schools a day in the Texas Louisiana area. So those are going to be like our two biggest moves for the second semester. So we're excited.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show. If anyone's been enjoying hearing about this and wants to see the videos, head to musicnotesonline.com. And yeah, just wishing you every success in the year ahead and the years ahead, because I think the work you're doing is tremendous.
Man, Chris, thank you so much. You all keep it up, and so glad to be on the platform. Thank you.
Oh, hey, one more thing. If you enjoyed this video, please take a second to like it on YouTube. And if you haven't already, please also subscribe to our channel there. That's going to help make sure you get all our latest videos as soon as they come out. And it also helps us reach more people, which means more episodes, better guests, and everybody wins. So please take a second to like this video and hit subscribe.